What's going on, everyone? Jack here from Half Chrome, and today we're going to talk about this guy. This is the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro, and it is the first mini drone with obstacle avoidance. That's right, this thing is less than 250 grams, which means you don't have to register it with the FAA if you're in the US, and if you're in other countries, there are other benefits as well. Now, Chris and I have been flying this thing and comparing it to other similar sub 250 gram drones. DJI has three options, but really only two that you should consider. We have the Mini SE, which is $299, and then we have the Mini 2, which is $450. Xiaomi put out this a while ago. This is the Fimi Mini, and it's about $350 as well. Now, I've seen this one closer to $300, but generally speaking, it checks in about $350. There are a couple of other options. We got the Bugs 19 and the ZLL Mini. This is the 108. I don't think these two are really viable comparisons because the cameras on these just aren't up to par. So we'll skip those two in the comparison. We'll see how the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro does against the DJI drones and the best non-DJI drone in the category, the Xiaomi Fimi Mini. Now, like I said, this is the only one that has obstacle avoidance, and this is also the most expensive, starting at $500 or $499, depending on where you buy it. All right, let's get after it. So spec-wise, the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro is the clear winner, right? But it's not always just about specs. But let's go over that first so you understand. This is the only one with obstacle avoidance. We have two sensors in the front, two sensors in the rear, and then we have a bunch of sensors on the bottom. We got some IR sensors here, as well as an optical flow camera. You'll notice this up here, that's an LED light. That's actually really nice. It'll light up your landing spot at night. This is the only one of the drones that has that as well. The camera on the Zino Mini Pro is a 4K camera on a full 3-axis gimbal. It does have a larger sensor than the other drones at 1/1.3 inches. So that is nice, and it should allow you to get a little bit more detail, especially in lower light situations. Now, the bitrate on this is up to 200 megabytes per second, which is also the best in the class. By default, it records at 100 megabytes per second, which is what most of these drones do, and that's probably sufficient, but you can bump it up to 200. Now, you're going to get a pretty big file size, but it will give you a little bit more detail to work with in post. It is just under 250 grams. My scale said it was 250, but you know, it's not exact, so we'll give Hubsan the benefit of the doubt at 249. This has the longest flight time of 40 minutes. Now, that is under ideal conditions. Nobody's getting 40 minutes on this drone, but you should be able to see over 30 minutes of flight time. Now, we will do our classic flight time test on this thing, so if you want to see exactly how well it does and how it compares to the other drones, you're gonna have to check back in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Now, the transmission system on this thing is 10,000 meters. That's over 6 miles, and it is pretty darn strong. Now, I did get good signal fidelity when I was flying behind obstacles, so I do think that it is pretty darn legit. Now, I'm not flying my drones 6 miles away, but you do know you have good signal strength there. That's provided by their Synclease 3.0 system. What does that mean? Who knows, but it does a nice job. This guy has a top speed of 35 miles an hour, which is comparable to the other drones as well. And you do have a handful of different quick shot abilities. There's an orbit mode, there is a follow me mode, there are waypoints on this, so it does have some things that some of these other drones do not. The camera will shoot 12 megapixel stills, and they say through a firmware update you'll get 48 megapixels later on. Now, what does that actually mean? It's not a 48 megapixel camera. No, it's probably something similar to the quad bear sensor we saw on the old Mavic Air 2, where it kind of splits the pixels into 4. 12 times 4 is 48. Okay, so let's talk about flying the Hubsan Zino Mini and how it compares to some of the other drones. Okay, so this is the Xiaomi Fimi Mini, and it's pretty comparable. Some things to keep in mind: has less flight time by about 10 minutes. The range is about 2,000 meters less, and this one has the smallest sensor of the group at 1/2.6 inches. This one does also have follow me and waypoints, so it does also have some of the things the Hubsan Zino Mini did as well. When we talk about the DJI Mini drones, they are basically the same thing except for the transmission system and the camera capabilities, right? So the Mini 2 here is the top of the line, $450. You get a 4K camera. and a 10,000 meter range. The video bitrate is 100 megabytes per second. When we compare that to this guy, $300, 2.7K camera, and a range of only 4,000 meters. It also only records at a bitrate of 40 megabytes per second, so keep that in mind. But in terms of how they fly, they're pretty much identical. The hardware on these two drones is the same. It's the software pretty much that keeps this guy, the SE, back from the Mini 2. All right, so what Chris and I did is we flew some patterns with all four of these drones that were very similar, so you can kind of compare the camera quality. Now, I think camera quality is the most important thing in a drone. Then we get into things like reliability and then features, and we'll talk about all of that. All right, so first, let's take a look at some of the videos coming out of these drones. Okay, so we'll take a look at video coming out of all four of these drones, starting with the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro. We're recording at 4K for all of them, except for the Mini SE, which only shoots at 2.7K. So this is 4K, 30 frames a second. And what do you think? I'll let you kind of make your own conclusions. Now, all these flights are happening on the same day, obviously not at the same time, but relatively similar time frame. Now we're looking at the Xiaomi Fimi Mini. This, again, is 4K footage. We're going to fly a similar flight so you can kind of use it to compare. Now, keep in mind, YouTube does compress the heck out of these things. Okay, so now we're looking at the DJI Mini SE, the least expensive of the crew at $299. Now, all of these are done with stock settings. We haven't messed with anything in post. We haven't messed with anything in the settings, right? So these are videos right out of the box for every single one of these drones. Now, here we have the last one, the DJI Mini 2. Right, this is 4K video yet again. The only one, remember, that wasn't 4K was the Mini SE, and that's because, well, it doesn't shoot 4K. So hopefully, you can kind of make your own conclusions, but remember, YouTube is going to compress the heck out of these videos. Now, here are all four drones. I'll tell you which is which after the flight here. Again, stock settings for all of them, 2.7K on the SE, but all the others are in 4K. Now, keep in mind, we are, of course, making them smaller, so there is that to kind of consider. Now, did you guess right? Upper left-hand corner is the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro. Below that is the Xiaomi Fimi Mini. Upper right-hand corner, we have the DJI Mini SE. That means the lower right-hand corner is the DJI Mini 2. Now let's take a look at some still photos. All right, this first photo is from the Hubsan Zino Mini. Now we're looking at the Xiaomi Fimi Mini. The next photo here is going to be the DJI Mini 2, which means the last photo here is the Mini SE. Now, I'm going to put them all on the screen at the same time so you can take a look at it. Then I'm going to zoom in right here 2 times, right? This is a 2 times zoom cropped in. Maybe this helps, maybe it doesn't, but you can kind of see what we're looking at here. Okay, so let's talk about how they actually fly. Now, this guy, the Xiaomi Fimi Mini, was my least favorite in terms of controllability. It just didn't seem to react to my inputs on the sticks as well as the other drones did. Both of these DJI drones were rock solid all the time, and they had the best hovering ability, right? If I put them in one place, I was pretty confident they were going to stay in that one place the whole time they were there. I couldn't say that for sure about the Xiaomi. And the Hubsan was okay, but definitely not on par with either of the DJI drones. Okay, so let's talk about flight modes. These two probably have the most. We're talking about the Xiaomi Fimi Mini and the Hubsan Zino Mini Pro. They both have follow me. Now, actually, I give the edge to the Xiaomi for the follow me. I had some glitches going on with the Hubsan. It kept losing signal. It kept going in and out of ADI mode. But that's kind of what you tend to get with a Hubsan drone. I think this Hubsan Zino Mini will be an excellent drone probably 4, 5, 6 months from now as they continue to push out firmware updates. That's pretty consistent with most of the Hubsan drones. They just kind of suffer from lack of quality control, or maybe they're just not polished, and they throw them out to the consumers to figure out what's wrong with it and give them feedback, and then they push out firmware. That's just kind of par for the course with a Hubsan drone. there was a point where I actually lost connection to this thing and had to return home. I was not able to get it back connected. Even when it was like 4 feet from me, it had to return home and had to land. And I was able to power it off, power it back on, and we were good to go. But just kind of some random glitchy things that Hubsan needs to fix. So I'm going to give you an example of the follow me working, right? So first we're going to talk about the active track following, which is okay. But you'll see here that once it loses you, it's not going to find you, right? So you drag a box around your subject, you click go, and then it will follow you, right? That's what we got going on here. This is a screen recording to my phone, and I'm just gonna kind of walk here along the path until it, for whatever reason, can't see me anymore. Right? It's doing okay, doing all right. I'm just kind of walking along here, and we've got a little bend in the road. It's gonna follow me around the bend. Here comes someone else approaching. Oh, it's starting to lose me. Gone. Right? I was not moving fast. There's no reason why it shouldn't have. It should have lost me here. It just did. It's not going to find me, so we're going to stop it. And we're going to go into the follow mode, but GPS, right? So in the GPS mode, the follow me here, you kind of set some parameters. You execute immediately. So you set the distance. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to me, and I'm going to do more of a top-down view for the GPS follow. That seems to work well. And I set the altitude. I set the distance from me, and then it will follow. Now I have control of the camera, so if I need to move it a little bit, if I need to push the drone up in the air a little bit, I can do that. And it's not going to lose me here. It doesn't matter if I walk behind an obstacle or not. We're going to have no issues with the follow me in GPS mode. So there are two modes, right? So if the active track just isn't working for you, then switch to the GPS mode and it will, right? But it's not going to necessarily center your subject. You're going to have to do a little bit more work with the GPS follow. Okay, so here we're going to do a quick follow me with the Xiaomi Fimi Mini, and I think it does a little bit better of a job. The process is pretty much the same. You draw a box around the subject, and you click the go button, and it will follow the subject. You can see the app here. Again, they're pretty darn similar. I mean, these drones are pretty comparable. I do think it does a better job in terms of the active track following. So there's that. I'm moving a little bit quicker here around the bend. Is this tree gonna trip it up? No, it's doing all right. And even I can change direction. I'm gonna do that here in a second, and it's gonna be okay. Look at that back pedal, so graceful. Didn't even fall. But yeah, it's a decent option if you need follow me, right? Look at that, coming right back at it, and it's moving backwards. But remember, no obstacle avoidance here. So if you use GPS follow, it's just going to follow the GPS on your phone, which again is going to be pretty darn good. And then you can control the gimbal, the camera, and what you want to do with it. So yeah, so both of these have follow and waypoints, which is not something you're going to get with either of the DJI drones. I do like the quick shots that you have with the DJI drones. They work well, and they're super easy and intuitive. But there is no follow me, and there is no obstacle avoidance. Let's talk about obstacle avoidance here. Now, I've got a video talking a little bit more about the obstacle avoidance, but you need to know a couple of things. One, you have to calibrate it, and that's a process which I'll cover in my other video. And two, it's not really that great out of the box. And you can't just push a button to calibrate it so that it is either. It's a process, keep that in mind. So the beeping does work, right? It'll sense obstacles, but in terms of like stopping, no, not always. I kind of messed it up here. I found that it performs a little bit better in slow mode versus normal, and it does not work at all in sport mode, but that's pretty consistent with most drones that have obstacle avoidance. I think in time it'll get better with firmware updates, but actually I really wonder about that because I know that this Zino Mini was delayed because of the chip shortage, and I wonder if Hubsan had to rely on a different chip to kind of get this thing off the ground. Now, something that is a little odd is when you fire this up, you don't get an FPV feed. I don't know if that's to conserve battery or if it's just because the processor gets hot too quickly when it's on the ground. So there's that. It's not a deal breaker, but just kind of an odd thing. Also, this Hubsan Zino Mini, you'll notice, has 2 SD card slots, but not really. You don't put an SD card in here. It has an internal hard drive, so 64, 128, I think maybe even a 256 option, and then it costs a little bit more each time you add memory to this guy. I have the 128 gig option, and there's plenty of storage on here. I don't have to worry about forgetting an SD card, although it's not quite as easy. I can't just pull the SD card and throw it in my computer. I have to connect it via this micro USB connector here to my computer and then transfer the files that way. Now it does create 2 files. It creates a low res file and a high res file, and that's actually a good thing. Some people are like, why do I have this file that just looks bad? Well, you can use proxies, and Chris has done a great video to show you how to use proxies, especially if you're recording in 4K. 4K will cripple a computer when you're editing unless you use a proxy file, and then you can kind of replace it at the end. So if you want to see how to do that to save space, if your computer isn't the best when it comes to video editing, you can get around that with proxies, and Hubsan creates one for you every time. So the question is, which one of these would I buy if I had, say, $500 to spend on a drone? My answer, I don't know. If I need something that has follow me, I like the light on this, yes, I would opt for the Hubsan, but I probably wouldn't spend money today. I'd probably wait to make sure that Hubsan gets the firmware correct before I pull the trigger on this guy. I don't see many scenarios where I would opt for this guy, the Xiaomi Fimi. It just isn't as reliable. I don't like the way that it flies, and I don't think the camera is as good as any of the others. When it comes down to it, the best bang for your buck is the Mini SE. This guy at $300 is absolutely capable of everything these other drones are, with the exception of the modes that it doesn't have, right? There's no obstacle avoidance, but does that matter if the obstacle avoidance doesn't really work? There's no follow me, but also you could get follow me with a third-party software, something like Lychee, if that's something you're really interested in. But the reliability on this, the camera on this, the rock solid feel in the air with the DJI Mini SE makes this the best bang for your buck. But that Mini SE does have range limitations. It is by far the most limited of this group. That's where this comes in. The Mini 2 is probably the best and will be the one that I recommend you get, right? $50 less than the Hubsan. This is the way to go. The camera is, I think, the best. The software, I think, is the best. The stability is the best. I don't think that's debatable. And you know you're getting a good experience with DJI. Listen, I would love for one of these other companies to take the throne from DJI, but they just keep making really good drones. Companies like Hubsan and Xiaomi are making strides, and they make a good drone, but why settle for good when you can have better? So it kind of depends. You have $500, which one of these do you want? Well, I'm not gonna tell you what to do. If you really want obstacle avoidance, yes. If you want reliability, DJI. If it doesn't matter, heck, buy both. Don't do that. You only need one mini drone. Which one's it gonna be? Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss videos coming your way. And if you haven't already, check out our Patreon. We give away a drone once a month to a lucky Patreon subscriber. Good luck, everybody, and happy flying.